It was the day before the deadline for college applications when I logged in for one final check and found that mine had been tampered with, morphed into something I didn't even recognize. After a heart-pounding half hour of frantically correcting every altered detail, my hands finally stopped shaking enough for me to call the police. Now, with an officer observing the tense silence, Ethan, the person who had been instructed to give me an apology, simply stood there, his eyes swollen and red. That's when my childhood friend Chloe, who had arrived late, rushed into the room and positioned herself protectively in front of him. "It was just a dare from a game," she said, her voice sharp. "You already fixed it, so what's the big deal? Did you really have to call the cops over something like this? Liam, can you not be so rigid and uninteresting for once?" That same evening, Chloe went and altered her own application, switching her first choice to the same university as Ethan. In front of our stunned classmates at a dinner, she announced her decision with an air of triumph. "Unlike certain people," she said, her eyes finding mine, "I actually know how to take a joke." She paused for a moment, as if a distant memory had surfaced, the promise we had made to each other. "Liam, it's not too late. You can still switch your application to NYU with me." I glanced at the clock on the wall and offered a faint, tired smile as I shook my head. My future was far too important to me. I had no intention of playing along with their games. Inside the police station, the officer's face was set in a grim expression. "Son," he said, his voice low and serious, "do you have any comprehension of how serious a crime it is to tamper with someone's official college application?" Under the weight of the officer's stare, Ethan bit his lip and remained silent, though the defiance in his red-rimmed eyes was unmistakable. I just stared back at him, my mind racing. No matter how many times I replayed the events, I couldn't connect the dots. Why would he, of all people, be the one to sabotage my future? He was an art student who had transferred to our class from out of state during our junior year. In the entire time he'd been at our school, we had barely exchanged more than a few words. As the silence in the small room grew heavier, the officer let out a sigh and turned his attention to me. "You boys are classmates. Is this something you're willing to resolve privately? I'm not the kind of person who holds on to a grudge, and besides, I had managed to catch the changes in time. It was a close call, a near disaster, but a disaster averted nonetheless." I gave a small, hesitant nod. "Okay," I said quietly, "but I want an apology." At my words, Ethan bit down on his lip even harder, his face contorting into a mask of pure humiliation as he stared directly at me. Before I could process his reaction, a sharp voice pierced the tense atmosphere. "Liam!" The voice was followed by the sound of frantic, hurried footsteps. I looked toward the door and saw Chloe, out of breath and with a worried look on her face. I instinctively rose to my feet. "Chloe, you're here!" Chloe and I had known each other for 18 years, practically since we were in diapers. Growing up, I had become accustomed to sharing everything with her, from the smallest daily triumphs to the biggest life decisions, always seeking her opinion. Without my ever consciously realizing it, she had become my anchor. We were the quintessential childhood sweethearts. Beneath the canopy of stars on the night of our shared 18th birthday, we had made a promise to attend the same college, to finally become the couple everyone in our small town always assumed we were destined to be. That was precisely why, when something as monumental as my application being sabotaged occurred, she was the very first person I thought to call. I had tried calling her even before I dialed the police, but she hadn't answered. I ended up sending her a text message only after I had already filed the official report. So, the moment she stepped into the police station, the frayed edges of my nerves finally began to settle. But she didn't spare me a single glance. Instead, she rushed past me and planted herself in front of Ethan, shielding him with her body before turning to face me. "It was just a dare from a game," she repeated, her tone accusatory. You already changed it back. So what's the big deal? You called the cops over this? Are you actually trying to ruin his life? I had never heard Chloe speak to me with such a tone before. Her sudden, aggressive outburst left me completely stunned. I watched her, frozen, as she frowned, her beautifully shaped lips pressed into a severe, thin line. I was the one who gave him the account information and password, she admitted defiantly. What are you going to do, have me arrested too? Liam, can you just stop making a federal case out of every little thing? Why do you always have to be so uptight and boring? The biting sarcasm in her voice and the undisguised disgust in her eyes were like a physical blow. I blinked, my head buzzing in disbelief as the situation spiraled into something surreal and absurd. This new version of Chloe didn't seem to have the patience to wait for me to formulate a response. She turned away from me and took Ethan's hand, assuming the role of his protector, and began to lead him toward the exit. Wait a second, I called out, my voice stopping them before they could leave. Why would you change my application? I paused, forcing myself to swallow the bitter taste that had risen in my throat. Didn't we agree we'd go to the same college? Chloe stopped walking, but didn't turn around. Does there have to be a reason for everything? It seemed like it would be fun, so we did it. Is that a problem? Then her expression seemed to soften just a fraction. Look, it was just a misunderstanding. The fact that you dragged it to the police station and wasted all their time is on you. She glanced down at Ethan, a flicker of what looked like pity crossing her face. Look how scared you made him. All right, the misunderstanding is cleared up now. I'm going to take him home so he can calm down. You should probably stay here and think about what you did. She let that hang in the air for a moment. Once you've figured it out, you can come and apologize to Ethan, and we can put all of this behind us. I couldn't believe the words I was hearing. The Chloe I knew could be a bit unpredictable, yes, but she had always, without exception, been on my side, no matter what. And in this situation, I was the one who was unequivocally the victim. Before my brain could fully catch up, the words were already tumbling out of my mouth. I'm not the one who needs to apologize. He does. Both of you do. She whipped her head around, her eyes blazing with an anger I had never seen directed at me. Liam, will you just die if you don't make a big deal out of everything? The fury in her gaze felt like a punch to the gut. After 18 years, I was intimately familiar with Chloe's sharp tongue. I knew she didn't pull her punches when she was angry. I just never imagined that one day she would turn that venom on me, all to defend another guy's mistake. For the first 18 years of my existence, my life felt as if it had been neatly split into two distinct halves. One half was dedicated entirely to my academic studies, and the other half was dedicated entirely to Chloe. To my peers, I was the quiet, aloof, and somewhat old-fashioned one. When I overheard my classmates talking about me, the description was always the same. Oh, you mean that nerd who doesn't seem to care about anything but his grades? I usually just laughed it off. I was no genius, but I was a firm believer in the power of hard work. When our senior year began, I poured every ounce of my energy into my schoolwork. Chloe, on the other hand, was different. She was exceptionally sharp and quick-witted. Complex concepts just seemed to click for her effortlessly. She had taught herself college-level calculus back in 11th grade. Even if she skipped classes for days on end to organize various school events, she always managed to ace her exams and maintain her position at the top of our class rankings. Everyone considered her a true prodigy. She was beautiful, intelligent, and full of a vibrant energy that was hard to resist. It was nearly impossible not to fall for a girl like that. From the moment I understood what love was, I had never made any secret of my feelings for her, and for a long, long time, I was convinced the feeling was mutual. When did things start to change? Suddenly, a flood of details I had previously ignored came rushing back to me with painful clarity. Ethan was an art major. His looks, his build, and that natural, broody artist vibe he exuded, it was a combination most guys our age simply couldn't compete with. The moment he transferred to our school, he captured the attention of most of the girls in our class. Many of them openly declared him their dream guy. I remember someone joking once, a Chloe and an Ethan. Don't those names just sound like they're meant to be? A perfect match. Someone else quickly chimed in, "Give me a break. Doesn't Chloe already have her boy next door?" The group had erupted in laughter. "You mean that nerd? We've been classmates for 3 years and I can't even remember what he looks like. He's so forgettable. Not like Ethan, who makes a real impression." Then, one particularly blunt student said, "The comparison isn't even fair. Chloe, what do you even see in that guy?" At the time, I was just passing by the classroom. I didn't stop to hear Chloe's answer, and I didn't allow their mean-spirited comments to get to me. But thinking back on it now, it seems like that was the moment it all started. Chloe and Ethan began spending more and more time together. I'd see them on the way to the cafeteria, sitting in adjacent seats in the study hall, huddled together in the crowd comparing answers after an exam. They were a constant presence in each other's lives. A boy's blush, they say, speaks volumes more than any love song. Perhaps that was the real reason Ethan had decided to change my application. I looked Chloe directly in the eyes. "After 12 years of studying my ass off, I thought you, of all people, would understand how hard I've worked for this. What if I hadn't logged back in to double-check? Who would have been the one to pay the price for my future? Chloe, do you really think this was just some harmless game?" After everything, all I was asking for was a simple apology. That didn't seem like too much. Maybe the seriousness of my expression finally registered with her. Chloe's eyes widened slightly, and she looked away, rubbing her nose in a nervous gesture. "You're always so careful about everything. Besides," she mumbled, "we were going to change it back before the deadline." I stared at her coldly, waiting. After a long, tense moment, Ethan, who had not uttered a single word the entire time, finally spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, the words sounding forced. "Is that good enough?" He tugged on Chloe's sleeve, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "If I had known it would turn into this, I never would have let you agree to that bet. Chloe, I'm really scared. I just want to go home." They looked at each other, their gazes so intense and locked together that it felt like they were the only two people in the room. The police officer standing next to me caught my eye and gave a small, helpless shake of his head. I paused, a profound sense of exhaustion washing over me. I turned and walked out of the police station first. Sometime while we had been inside, it had started to pour rain. I stood under the narrow eaves of the building, waiting for my parents to come pick me up. Chloe emerged right after me, and without saying a word, took off her jacket. She held it over Ethan's head with one hand and wrapped her other arm protectively around his waist. They huddled close together and then ran off into the downpour. Watching their two carefree figures disappear into the sheets of rain, a bitter taste filled my mouth. My heart felt as though it was being squeezed by a giant, invisible hand, a dull ache spreading through my chest. How could I not be sad? That was my entire 18 years disappearing into the rain. Just 3 days ago, I could still feel her warm breath on my lips as we talked about our future. Her eyes had been sparkling, so bright that I couldn't look away. How had everything changed so completely, so suddenly? In that instant, all of those vibrant, cherished memories seemed to fade to gray. I stood under the eaves for a long time, until my dad's car finally pulled up in front of me. The sharp, impatient honk of the horn snapped me out of my thoughts. The rain was coming down too hard. It felt like Chloe and I could never go back to the way things were. When I got home, my mom clutched her chest in a gesture of relief. That Chloe is just out of control, she sighed. Thank goodness nothing truly terrible happened. If our families hadn't been good neighbors for so many years, I would have made your father go over there and have a serious talk with her parents. Then she studied my expression carefully. Everyone has to deal with a toxic person at some point in their youth. Finding out before you're married is always a blessing in disguise. I know you've always been a kid with a strong mind, so I won't say much more to try and comfort you. Come on, let's go out for a nice dinner tonight. I managed a weak smile and nodded under my mom's expectant gaze. Because my family is so close, I've never kept secrets from my parents. I was immensely grateful to have such open-minded and caring people in my corner. Unfortunately, our cozy family dinner never materialized. The news that the three of us had ended up at the police station spread through our class like wildfire, causing quite a stir. It didn't take long for the school administration to get involved. In the end, our homeroom teacher decided to organize a graduation dinner, moving the event up from its scheduled date in early August to that very night. When I received the notice, I immediately understood her intention. I had done exceptionally well on my college entrance exams, placing 3rd in the city and 47th in the entire province. My raw score had just barely cleared the cutoff for admission to both Harvard and MIT. Chloe, who had long been known throughout the school as a genius, had underperformed slightly by her standards. Still, she was brilliant, and her score was more than sufficient to get into top-tier public universities, like the schools in the University of California system. When we had first filled out our applications, Chloe and I had spent 3 whole days researching our options. After weighing everything, our reaches, our targets, and our safeties, I had made the decision to give up my shot at the Ivies and list Berkeley as my first choice, the same as her. The school administration had gone from initially disapproving of our relationship to wishing us well. Naturally, they didn't want us to be on bad terms before graduation. It was abundantly clear that this dinner was meant to be a let's shake hands and make up event. I just wondered what their faces would look like when they found out I'd decided to aim for Harvard and MIT again. My guess was right. Chloe, Ethan, and I were seated right next to each other. During the meal, our homeroom teacher played the role of mediator. I've already spoken to them very sternly, she said, looking between us, and I believe they now understand the gravity of their mistake. As she spoke, she gave Chloe a subtle, meaningful look. She must have had a private conversation with them beforehand. When Chloe met my eyes this time, the impatience and disgust that had been so evident at the police station were gone. She raised her glass of soda and downed it in one go. You always said we never stay mad at each other overnight, she said, her voice soft. Ethan quickly chimed in, tugging at my sleeve in a fawning, pleading way. I really didn't think it through. Liam, please be the bigger person and forgive us. I shifted my body sharply, avoiding Ethan's touch. I looked up and held Chloe's gaze for several long seconds before I tilted my head slightly, breaking the eye contact. Not everything can be forgiven, I said, my voice low but firm. And not everything deserves to be forgiven. At least, not right now. Chloe's betrayal, her cheating, and the way she had treated my future like it was nothing more than a joke. All of it. I simply couldn't forgive it. The atmosphere at our table became thick with awkwardness. After a moment of heavy silence, my homeroom teacher patted my shoulder as if she understood what I was feeling and quietly walked away. It was a gesture of both resignation and comfort. I gave her a grateful smile. In my peripheral vision, a familiar face was heading our way. It was Maya, a classmate who was always with Chloe. She waved her hand casually as she approached. Hey, you really shouldn't blame them for this, she said breezily. We had a few drinks that night and were playing some games, and Chloe lost a round. So, we made a bet. Chloe was absolutely sure you'd notice your application was changed and that you wouldn't get genuinely mad at her. Don't make your friend lose face in front of everyone." She was about to say more, but Chloe cut her off. Perhaps my reaction today was truly not what she had expected. Or maybe her best friend's words had struck a nerve. She frowned and scoffed. "That's enough. What's the point of telling him all this? A bet's a bet. I already changed my application to NYU." She paused, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips as her eyes lingered on me, just like she used to. Her tone was teasing. "So, Liam, we've apologized, and we've given you an out. It's not too late to change your application to NYU and come with me." She seemed to think of something and let out a muffled laugh. "Besides me, who else could possibly put up with your spoiled attitude? You have no body, no personality?" She got carried away. Splat! I grabbed my glass of soda and threw its entire contents in her face. Caught completely off guard, she reflexively squeezed her eyes shut as the orange liquid dripped from the ends of her hair. A second later, she wiped her face with the back of her hand. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with a cold, simmering malice. I gave her a slow, deliberate smile. "Your mother must be a real comedian to have produced a joke like you." Chloe's expression twisted instantly. She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong, and her voice was squeezed out between her clenched teeth. "What did you just say?" I used leverage to wrench my wrist from her grasp. Out of respect for our time as classmates, I agreed to let this go. But that doesn't mean it's forgotten. If you two don't think you did anything wrong, then we don't have to settle this. I'll press charges, he'll get detained, and you'll be right there with him. You can both have criminal records and ruin your futures together. When that happens, don't blame me for not caring about our friendship." The once lively private room fell completely silent. Everywhere I looked, I saw shocked faces. What were they so shocked about? In 3 years as classmates, they had seen me give in to Chloe time and time again. They had seen me be good-natured and accommodating, but they had never seen me be so ruthless when I knew I was in the right. I took a deep breath and walked up to the small, circular stage that had been set up for school leaders to give speeches. "I'd like to take this opportunity to say a few words from the heart," I began. "Our teachers have told us many times how much our college entrance exams will impact our lives. For me, personally, my scores are proof of years of my hard work. I will not allow anyone, in any way, to diminish their value to me. I simply can't bring myself to forgive this so quickly. At the same time, I have no desire to attend the same university as people like that. By the same token, I hope all of you here will learn from my experience and always be prepared to protect your own legal rights." If my earlier words to Chloe had merely surprised them, now their expressions were pure, unadulterated shock. My gaze swept across the faces of my classmates and the school administrators, deliberately avoiding looking at Chloe and Ethan. It felt incredibly cathartic to finally say what was on my mind. While everyone was still processing what had just happened, I stepped down from the stage. A school administrator immediately came up to me. "Liam, what you just said, does that mean—" I nodded, a faint smile touching my lips. "Yes, I'm going to aim for Harvard and MIT again." At my words, the administrators' faces broke into wide, relieved smiles. "That's great! You absolutely should! Your teachers have always said you had great potential." "Come on, let's go back to the school's computer lab right now and look at majors. Time is short, and we've got work to do." Just like that, I was surrounded and escorted out of the room. As I passed Chloe, her eyes were filled with a coldness so thick you could cut it with a knife. That night, everyone knew that Chloe and I were done. On the way home, I blocked her on every platform. Truthfully, cutting her off completely wasn't an easy thing for someone like me, someone who is slow to warm up and inherently sentimental. But I am also stubborn. Once I make up my mind about something, I forced myself to see it through to the end. 2 weeks flew by. During that time, I ran into Chloe twice at the local mall. Both times I acted as if she were invisible. She gave me a cold, dismissive look and walked past without a single word. I thought that would be the end of our interactions in this life. I never expected to run into her again on a sun-drenched beach in another country. A split second before our eyes met, she had just leaned down to take a bite of ice cream from Ethan's hand. When she saw me, she froze mid-motion. "Liam?" she asked, her tone uncertain. Then, she quickly pushed her sunglasses up to hide her eyes. I smiled slightly. My reflection appeared in her dark lenses. I looked different now. Gone were the baggy t-shirts and long pants I used to wear. I was wearing a breezy linen shirt and comfortable beach shorts. The glasses that were usually perched on my nose had been replaced with contacts. Even my normally pale face had a healthy tan from the sun. I didn't miss the flash of surprise in her eyes. After looking me over, Chloe's expression became awkward. 2 seconds later, a faint, forced smile touched her lips, but her tone was strained. "What are you doing here? Did my mom tell you we were coming?" I rolled my eyes. "Your level of self-absorption is truly breathtaking," I said. And with that, I turned to leave. Chloe reacted instantly, stepping forward and grabbing my arm. "Don't be ridiculous. What are you doing running around by yourself? What if you get into some kind of trouble?" Her words made me freeze for a second. She seemed to realize her slip of the tongue, her breath catching in her throat. She quickly tried to backtrack. "I mean, it's not like I'm worried about you. I'm just afraid that if something happened to you, I'd have a hard time explaining it to your parents. After 18 years together, I often had the illusion that I knew her well. Like right now. I could see right through her flimsy excuse. In the past, I would have found her awkwardness endearing, but now it just felt pathetic." I realized, with a sudden pang, that I didn't understand her at all. I didn't understand how she could be all over the guy next to her one minute and then act genuinely concerned about me the next. Lost in thought, I spaced out for a moment. Who said he's alone? As I was zoning out, a hand gently pulled my arm from Chloe's grasp. I snapped back to reality. Noah was standing protectively in front of me, his expression indignant. "Can't keep your hands to yourself, can you? God, you cheaters are the worst. Back off." Caught completely off guard, Chloe just stood there, completely baffled by his insults. I let out a laugh and grabbed Noah's arm. "Come on. Didn't you say you wanted to go diving?" I pulled Noah away. Behind us, Chloe's voice rose, filled with frustration. "Liam, since when did you get so close to someone else? Why didn't I know about this?" I didn't stop or answer her. The truth was, even I hadn't expected it. After my fallout with Chloe, I had found a long overdue friendship. But from that day forward, there would be a lot of things she wouldn't know. That day, my impassioned speech in front of everyone had earned me an unexpected fan. My deskmate, Noah. He was the dark horse of our graduating class, having scored just 1 point below me on the exams. But he was far more decisive. From the very beginning, he had been determined to aim for Harvard and MIT, and had already submitted his application long before the drama with mine. That night, he offered to help me choose my major. Finally, with just 20 minutes left before the application portal closed for good, I locked in my final decision. We shared a triumphant smile in the quiet of the school's computer lab. This graduation trip was another one of our spur-of-the-moment ideas. The turquoise water was breathtakingly beautiful. It was so clear it looked like a giant, shimmering block of blue-green gelatin. Sunlight danced on the surface of the ocean. The underwater world was so vivid it was like watching a nature documentary in 4K. Schools of brightly colored fish darted past, and the coral gardens were a riot of color. It was an incredible sensory experience, enough to make you forget all your worries, at least for a little while. I surfaced from the water, my mood still bright, even when I saw Chloe and Ethan not far away. I got back on the shore, and a staff member helped me take off my heavy gear. As they did, I couldn't help but overhear Chloe and Ethan's frantic conversation. "Chloe, what do we do? That memory card has all the pictures from our trip. It's all my fault for being so careless." Unlike Ethan's panicked tone, Chloe's voice was much calmer. "Don't worry, I'll dive again and check the deep water area. Maybe it hasn't drifted too far." With that, she walked over and started speaking to the staff in English. I was forced to listen to their conversation. The staff's warnings and concerns about the deep water currents were clearly audible. For some reason, my heart suddenly lurched. A strong sense of unease made me glance at Chloe as she stubbornly headed toward the deep water zone. My sixth sense was usually accurate. This feeling of dread lingered, refusing to go away. So much so that an hour later, back in the rest area, I looked up as if compelled by some unseen force. The huge LED screen on the wall was split into several feeds, allowing the staff to monitor the divers in real time. It was strange. Even though everyone was wearing identical wetsuits, I could still pick out Chloe's figure on one of the screens. One glance was all it took. I could tell something was wrong with her movements. This was a matter of life and death. Without a moment's hesitation, I walked over to Ethan. "How long has Chloe been down there?" My sudden question startled him. He pressed his lips together, his face a mask of suspicion, as he replied curtly, "None of your business." It was a classic scene of rivals meeting. My gaze turned cold as I pointed to a corner of the big screen. "If you don't want something to happen to her, you'll go get the staff to rescue her right now." He followed my finger, and a condescending smirk appeared on his face. "Happen to her? You do know Chloe's a certified diver, right? She's good enough to be an instructor. To put it nicely, you're just worried. To put it bluntly, you're practically cursing her. You're not still hung up on that, are you? Or maybe you're not over Chloe at all. Save it, Liam. Love isn't first come, first served." He was about to say more, but I turned away. Done wasting my breath on him, I went straight to the staff for help. Fortunately, after I explained the situation, the staff's emergency response was swift. 10 minutes later, the diver who had been behaving abnormally was brought to shore. When the cumbersome gear was removed, it was indeed Chloe's face. Her lips were dry and chapped, and her face was pale, etched with the raw fear of someone who had just escaped death. After hearing the staff's explanation of what happened, she suddenly grabbed my hand. "Liam," she whispered, her palm ice cold. I pulled my hand away. She froze, her voice hoarse. "I knew it. You still care about me. Can we please stop fighting? My life is yours now. You can do whatever you want with it." She looked at me with a tender, forgiving gaze, with a hint of helplessness mixed in. It was the same gentle way she used to look at me after she had made me angry in the past, as if nothing bad had ever happened between us. I looked down, my emotions inconveniently rushing back to the surface. I don't know if it was her expression or the fact that I had just watched her nearly die, but I suddenly remembered things from the past, and my heart clenched with a sharp, unexpected pain. Then, in the blink of an eye, I was back to normal. After a moment, I spoke, my voice cold and detached. "It's not because I care." "What?" Meeting her confused eyes, my expression was so flat it was almost cruel. "It's just respect for life. If it had been a total stranger in the water today, I would have done the exact same thing." Chloe grabbed onto my arm, wanting to say more, but she was interrupted by Ethan, who came rushing over. "Chloe, are you okay?" Ethan looked even paler than Chloe. He roughly pushed me aside to get to her, patting his own chest as if still shaken. "You scared me to death." I curled my lip into a small, humorless smile. Letting go of a long-held obsession can happen in an instant. Perhaps it was because I had saved her life, but when I ran into Chloe again in the hotel hallway, she seemed to have reverted to the person I remembered. The way she looked at me was with that same passionate gaze I had once mistaken for love. I shifted my position slightly, and Noah quickly stepped forward to block her sticky stare. "Who are you trying to gross out? Your late-game affection is worth less than dirt. So now you finally realize how great our Liam is? Too late." He didn't bother to lower his voice. In my periphery, I saw one of their faces turn bright red and the other deathly white. I felt a secret thrill of satisfaction and gave Noah a subtle thumbs up. He leaned in and whispered in my ear, "That guy is definitely triggered. What a poser. You can tell by his eyes he's up to no good." His words turned out to be prophetic. Ethan really did try to get under my skin. Late that night, a picture message from an unknown number popped up on my phone. As I unlocked it, I was still wondering who even sends picture messages anymore. The next second, after seeing the image, I wished I could bleach my eyes. It was a selfie taken from a guy's perspective in bed, capturing half his face. Two people were lying on their sides, embracing, their upper bodies nearly bare. A girl's slender hand rested on the guy's firm chest. I was speechless, but I was definitely grossed out. I felt like I had accidentally swallowed a fly. After thinking for a moment, I typed out a reply. "You don't need to send photos to mark your territory. My opinion is congratulations, and I hope you two are locked together forever." I put my phone down and took a deep breath. Thank goodness our 5-night, 6-day trip was ending tomorrow. A few more encounters with those two, and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to control my fists. After returning home, I didn't go back to my own house right away. To avoid any chance of running into Chloe, I went to stay with my grandparents in the next city for a while. I only came back just before school was scheduled to start. I was trying to figure out how to completely avoid seeing Chloe when I suddenly got a call from her mom. "Liam, have you been in contact with Chloe recently?" For some reason, her mom's voice was so anxious it was almost shrill. I instinctively held the phone away from my ear. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Grant, but Chloe and I aren't in touch anymore." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Did you two have a fight? You young people, it's normal to have disagreements, but now is not the time to be stubborn. Here's the thing. Chloe had a huge fight with her dad the night before last. You know, teenage rebellion, she gets emotional, and the kid actually ran away from home. She hasn't been back for 2 days, and her phone is turned off. Look, can you help me get in touch with her? Tell her to come home immediately so we can discuss her college application again?" She grew more and more agitated as she spoke. I listened quietly, then repeated my apology. I also offered some rational advice. If you haven't been able to reach her after 48 hours, you can technically file a police report. Who knew those last 2 words would set her off? "Report what to the police? You little brat, you have the nerve to mention the police to me? If you hadn't taken it upon yourself to call them that time and embarrass Chloe, would you two be in this mess? I'm not trying to criticize you, but you're at such a wonderful age, with years of friendship behind you. How could you not keep a better eye on your own girlfriend? You just gave that pretty boy an opportunity. What, your future is so important, but our Chloe's is just a joke?" The barrage of accusations left me completely stunned. I hadn't even processed how a call asking for help finding a daughter had somehow turned into a one-sided lecture aimed at me. My mom, who was nearby, couldn't take it anymore and cut in. "As your neighbor, I understand you're worried about your daughter, but Chloe's own poor character has nothing to do with our Liam. Mrs. Grant, instead of wasting your time saying this nonsense to a kid, why don't you go find your own good-for-nothing daughter? You're old enough to know better. Don't act like our family's a pushover." With that, my mom slammed the phone down. She was clearly furious. I reached out and rubbed her back gently. Before I could say anything comforting, she turned to me, her anger vanishing as a smile appeared on her face. "Sorry, sweetie, did I scare you? Your mom is just… what's that phrase? My politeness is conditional. If you push me, I'll push back harder. They're acting like we're the enemy. That girl's boyfriend showed up at their house the night before last, claiming he and Chloe were in true love and that she changed her college choice for him. The Grants never imagined their daughter would give up a top-tier university for some bottom-tier state school for a boy, and that girl has no backbone. She turned on her own parents, said she wanted to take a gap year and reapply to Harvard and MIT. They were fighting all night. It was a total mess. Anyway, don't listen to her crazy talk. Their family drama is just getting started. You just focus on getting ready for school. Your dad and I have already found a house. Once the renovations are done, our whole family will be together in New York, far away from all this drama. Out of sight, out of mind. I looked at her, surprised. I had no idea that while I was away, my parents had been planning to move, and it seemed like everything was already arranged. After a moment of stunned silence, I laughed and gave my mom a thumbs up. "Mom, your fighting skills are top-notch." If my upbringing hadn't taught me not to argue with elders, I definitely would have retorted. But moving was a good idea. My dad had been planning to expand his business into the New York market for a few years now. Hopefully, it wasn't too late. I didn't give Chloe's mom's phone call another thought. That night, I stayed up an hour later than usual, watching a classic movie. I finished brushing my teeth, yawning, and was about to get into bed when suddenly, a piercing screech of brakes came from outside. Screech! It was followed immediately by the sickening sound of a crash and shattering glass. I shot up in bed and looked out the window. The bright streetlights gave me a clear view of the car crash, less than 300 feet from my house. The car that was now bursting into flames. It was the Grants' car. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I immediately dialed 911. Just then, my parents, also woken by the noise, opened their bedroom doors. My mom hastily threw a coat over her pajamas, and my dad was buttoning his shirt as he walked. Before they left, they both said to me in unison, "Don't be scared. You go back to sleep. Mom and Dad are just going out to help." Then I heard the front door click shut. I felt like I was waking from a dream. I opened my window and looked outside again. A small crowd of kind-hearted people had already gathered, drawn by the noise. I could see my parents busy among them. The murmurs of the crowd drifted up to my window. What a terrible accident. I heard they were out looking for their runaway daughter. They haven't even found their daughter, and now this happens. So tragic. I didn't hesitate any longer. I quickly dialed the number I knew by heart. The seconds ticked by. The familiar ringtone played over and over. I watched from my window as a blood-covered Mr. Grant and a pale Mrs. Grant were taken away by an ambulance, and the wrecked cars were towed away. The accident scene was cordoned off and then cleaned up by professionals. The sky began to lighten. Finally, Chloe's voice came through the phone. "Hello?" she mumbled, her voice hoarse with sleep. "Liam, I know you're eager, but calm down. Finally figured it out? Scared I won't want you anymore? You don't have to blow up my phone like this." I was in no mood for her jokes. My own voice was a little hoarse, but it was from being up all night. "Chloe, your parents were in an accident, a car crash. I don't care where you are, but you need to get to the City General Hospital emergency room, now. My parents are there, and so are the neighbors, the Wilsons. They need you more." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard the frantic sounds of her scrambling out of bed and getting dressed. I let out a breath of relief and hung up. The first rays of sun broke through the clouds. The morning light wasn't harsh, and a light rain had fallen overnight, leaving the air smelling faintly of damp earth. As the first witness, and the one who had called it in, I was invited to the police station to give a very detailed statement. By the time I left, The sun was high in the sky. I stretched my stiff neck. Unexpectedly, I met a pair of familiar eyes at the station entrance. Chloe's face was pale and haggard, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and helplessness. When she saw me, she gave a weak smile. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "And thank you." I lifted my gaze and met hers calmly. "How are your parents?" Her smile faltered. "My dad's still in the ICU, but my mom is awake. The doctor said she was lucky, just a mild concussion and a fracture. She just needs to rest." I nodded. I started to walk around her to go home. As I passed, Chloe suddenly looked down. Two streams of tears fell from the eyes that had once sparkled with so much confidence. "Tell me," she whispered, "am I really just too selfish? If I hadn't run away, would they have gotten into that crash? If I hadn't, you wouldn't have cut me off. It's my fault. It's all my fault." Hearing this, I stopped. I turned and looked directly into her tear-filled eyes. "Yes," I said, my voice even. "You're not just selfish, you're also incredibly immature. Immature, reckless, and impulsive. You eventually have to pay the price for your actions." Chloe didn't seem to expect me to be so blunt. She looked down and gave a bitter laugh. "I thought you might pity me enough to forgive me. For a little while, maybe offer some comfort." Then she looked at me, her expression full of guilt. "I heard about the call my mom made to you. She wanted me to apologize to you on her behalf. You were right. It all started because of me. I shouldn't have been so quick to run my mouth in front of her, saying things to make her misunderstand you. But that was all in the past. I admit I had some prejudices against you before. I always thought you were boring and uptight, that you couldn't have fun. I thought you weren't my soulmate. Ethan was like a gift. When he showed up, he caught my eye, and I found a new kind of excitement I'd never felt before. You might not believe this, but ever since we got back from the Bahamas, I've realized that all of that stuff is so superficial. I regret it. This isn't just a feeling I'm having today. It started after we got back from the Bahamas, or maybe even when we left the police station that day. It's just, you know me, I have double standards and too much pride, so I kept holding on. If I change my ways, if I'm not fickle anymore, can you give me another chance? I'll change. I can even take a gap year. I know you got into Harvard. Wait for me for 1 year. I'll definitely get in and be in the class below you. Can we start over?" She stood there dejectedly, rambling on and on. She was so nervous she was biting her lip until it turned white. I listened quietly until she finished, then met her hopeful gaze and firmly shook my head. "No, we can't. I don't want to start over with you." I denied her 3 times. "Honestly, I understand your thought process less and less. Your parents are lying in the hospital, and instead of thinking about how to get through this crisis with your family and take care of them, you're trying to salvage a dead-end relationship. On that point alone, we can never get back together. I can accept your apology and your thanks for what happened before, but that's it." With that, I turned and walked away. That was the last time Chloe and I ever had a calm conversation. At the end of August, I started my freshman year at Harvard as planned. I adapted to college life quickly. It was busy, fulfilling, and fun. 2 months later, my parents showed up with their luggage and moved me into our new house. The new place was very close to campus. It was a second-hand house, sold below market value by a gentleman who was in a hurry to move abroad to be with his granddaughter. This homeowner was a very interesting man. Before handing over the keys, he chatted cheerfully. "Don't let the fact that this house is second-hand fool you. It's practically new. I bought it so my older granddaughter would have a convenient place to stay for her exams. She only stayed here for 2 nights, and guess what? The girl got into MIT. See? This house has good feng shui, right? Lots of people wanted to buy this place, but I'm picky. I just had a good feeling about you folks. The price isn't important. What's important is that we were brought together by fate." My mom was amused by his speech and pointed at me, not to be outdone. "What a coincidence! My son just started at Harvard this year." When the homeowner heard this, he got even more excited. "See, I told you it was fate. We should really introduce the kids sometime." And just like that, the two generations were brought closer by the random connection of Harvard and MIT. They became good friends who enjoyed each other's company. A year later, I did meet the homeowner's granddaughter. It was a case of we didn't get along at first. Later, when we announced to our families that we planned to get married, my mom and the homeowner were the most thrilled. That day, my mom raised an eyebrow smugly. "Good family values and a solid moral compass come from a good upbringing. I knew from the first moment I saw that young lady that she was a great catch." She leaned in and whispered conspiratorially, "So much better than Chloe's parents." After so many years, even hearing Chloe's name felt a bit strange. The image of the girl from my memories had been washed away by the river of time, growing fainter and fainter. To this day, I can't clearly remember what she looked like. I've rarely heard any news about her over the years. I vaguely heard that her family's life didn't turn out well. The car accident left her father permanently paralyzed. The day before she was supposed to start college, Ethan's ex-girlfriend showed up at her door with a baby, claiming it was his child. Chloe didn't take a gap year. Instead, she finished her degree early at the university she had switched to. As for Ethan, he dropped out of school to become a father. When I was a junior, Chloe graduated and started her own business. But that path was full of obstacles. On top of that, the constant conflicts with Ethan and her mother wore her down. The last I heard, Ethan had maxed out a bunch of credit cards and couldn't pay them back. He suddenly abandoned their 3-year-old son without a word, leaving Chloe with a mountain of problems. I heard that when Chloe found out the truth, she had a complete breakdown and even considered drowning herself and the child in a river. A kind neighbor rescued her in time, but to me, all of this was just gossip about someone from my past, heard by chance. It didn't stir any emotion in me. After I rejected Chloe at the police station, she did show up uninvited a few times, putting on a show of deep affection for me. But my indifference was more resolute than her affection. Just like the last time we saw each other, I told her, "The gifts that fate bestows upon you have already been secretly marked with a price tag. Every choice we make, every action we take, invisibly shapes our future. So, by living each moment with intention, we can better face whatever the future holds. The whole journey is the scenery. You don't need to cross mountains for any one person. A thought for you, for me, and for all of us."